So why is it that people want to scale their real estate portfolio anyway? We talk about time freedom, we talk about wealth, we talk about all the things, but why are we taking risks? Why are we expanding our portfolios? Why do we get into this game? It was an interesting conversation. I thought it would be fun to share with our listeners because I think we talk about the need behind the need. Like you have to have a burning why to do something. And usually people think it's wealth. But I don't think it's wealth. And then we've talked about this on the show before. It's really time freedom. But is it time freedom? Because we have time freedom. We can do what we want, but we still work, right? I mean, you're not out playing pickleball and I don't know, golfing or whatever it is, boring people like you do all day long. Like, so we're not retired. We can be, I guess, but we're not. Why are we still working? Why are we still growing our portfolio? Why is that?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, we did talk about this and we were kind of peeling back the layers because part of it's just to understand ourselves, our own drive. I mean, there's multiple things, right? I think one of the reasons is we want to continue to solve problems. And I think that when you solve problems and in the world, you're able to help people and it's a mutually beneficial, transaction. I mean, that's the best capitalism, right? Where you actually go make a profit, helping people, helping communities. So they're solving problems. I think that's one of the peripherals. The excitement of finding a deal can be exciting, or raising money or helping somebody else sort of have a big aha. However, those are all like sort of like spokes to the hub. It's interesting because I was listening to this podcast, or a video. I can't remember what it was. It was Dean Graziosi though. And he was talking about like going through the exercise of the 7 whys. And this guy like took him through and he's like, every time Dean would say the why he's doing something, he'd be like, okay, but why? So he's like, well, I want financial freedom. He's like, why? Well, I want time freedom. Okay, but why? Well, I want my kids to have good security. Why? He just kept digging. And what Dean said
of himself, was this like the voice in his head, or was he like?
No, this was like a coach. This was like a coach.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And so what was interesting though is Dean got to the 7th why. That was like the whole exercise. And Dean just said one word that like changed the way I think about my own life. And I realized I think I have a lot in common with Dean, the way he thinks. And that was the word control.
Oh, wait a minute.
And Dean was like,
you said that was your idea. You actually plagiarized this from somebody.
Well, it was my idea. I inspired Dean to say that. So anyway, but the concept though was so interesting because he was like, look, I want to have control. Do I not want to work? No, I still want to work. I still want to solve problems. I still want to get together with a buddy and like go take something down or go build something or build a new business or whatever. But control, I think, is
like the game.
100%. But control is such a rare thing now today in today's world. And I think that as like, men and women, we grow up, we get to our, say, 30s, 40s, which by the way, I think 30s is when I really started to want control because I'm like, I spent my whole 20s realizing that somebody else took it away from me. Right. And then by the time you're 30, you're like, okay, I gotta go figure this out. And of course, 40s, 50s, whatever. As humans, as adults, men or women, I think we want to have control of our life, control of our time, control of when we take a vacation or we skip work and go work out or be with our kids or go, the other day I spent 2 hours at the fun run with my daughter. Like I want to solve big problems, but I want to control my life. And long-winded way of saying this is why I think I'm in real estate. I think this is why you're in real estate. And I think this is why a lot of people jump over to the dark side of real estate. By the way, not just real estate, because there's a lot of people in real estate that don't have control either. They're selling mortgages or they're selling houses or they're transaction people. They're flipping, they're wholesaling. There's no control there either. So I'm talking about investment real estate. I think that investment real estate, if you do it right, there's a very wide, when you look at real estate, it's very wide, right? But like there's a small lane that if you actually follow that small lane, like the core sort of like concepts and strategies and like framework, that small sort of window, you go a mile deep there, which is cash flow real estate, go a mile deep there and you will get control back of your life. So anyway, I think the conversation is about control. And that's where I land. I think that's where you land. And I think a lot of listeners are probably sitting here going, yeah, maybe I don't want to be retired or be like, eat nothing. Because doing nothing, man, you go on a vacation for 2 weeks. What do you want to do? You just want to get back. You want to get to work. You want to go solve a problem. So I do think control, that word really resonated with me.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are people that get into it, replace their day job with passive income, and then maybe they do get on a boat and that's it. And that's awesome. That's great. I would say that probably is a smaller percentage of the people that get into this game. I would say there's two things that you said that are wrong. One, you said that you got into your 30s and the world took away your control. First of all, I think that's a victim mentality, and I'll elaborate on that in a second. And number two,
go ahead.
You said you went on a fun run with your daughter, and we know you don't run. You probably, I don't know.
Well, first of all, I do run, but I watched the run, so I did not run here. Second of all, victim mentality or not, I think a lot of humans get into their late 20s, 30s, and they have this big awakening, and they go, "Oh my God, I got the degree I wanted, I got the career I wanted, I got all this stuff," and they don't have the life they want.
But that's what I'm saying.
Now, whether it's their fault or society's fault or whatever, you can argue until you're blue in the face because you like to get sidetracked and distracted.
No, I was going to make.
You can't stay on that. You can't stay on the topic. But that's the point is okay. What's the point?
What's the point?
Here we go.
It was a great. I was going to segue myself into another good.
You're trying to alley-oop yourself. You're trying to give yourself a.
No, but then you love to hear yourself
setup. It's a setup.
Okay.
Setup.
Okay. Anyway, I think we're conditioned. I think we're educated. I know I've talked about this. I think that the conspiracy theorist in me has always said that I think we need worker bees. We need people that have to request vacations. We need people that have to trade time for money. We need people to do that. And so I think whether it's on purpose, or I think at some point in history it was on purpose, with the industrial age and educating people to be worker bees. But I think it stands true today. I mean, I see my kids in school, they never ask like, what do you want to create? What do you want to build? They say, what do you want your job to be? Right. And that's what the teachers ask. And what do you want your career to be? Who do you want to work for? And we're conditioned to go to college, and you don't have a lot of control in college, right? You take the courses and they say, oh, you need to fill out 3 more elective credits with basket weaving and, gender studies or whatever it is. And then you do the thing, and then you get your degree, and then you don't really have control over that. And then you go work for somebody, and then you completely lose your control because you are, like you said, you're clocking in, you're clocking out. Whether you're working from home or not, you got to sit at home, you got to do the thing, and you don't have control. They tell you, here's your manual, here's how you do your job, here's how you request vacation. And then they say whatever's left, then you lose, almost half your income, depending on your income bracket, to the government. You don't have any control over it. That money leaves your account before it lands in your bank account, right? It goes to the government. So you lose control over a big chunk of your income. And then whatever's left, you give to Wall Street. And they say invest in your 401k or IRA or your whatever the hell it is. And you have no control over that. People think they have control because they're investing in the index fund and the things. But you don't have control over what these stocks are doing, what these boards are doing, what these CEOs are doing. So you lose control there. And you don't have control over the upside of your investment. You don't have the cash flow off of it. So I think you wake up and you go, oh, I've been conditioned to not have control. I don't have control. I hope my home appreciates. It might not. The market might go up. It might go down. I don't know. And I think people they realize that they never had control, and they were conditioned not to have control. And to me, that's like, I was joking with you when you were being a victim. You are a victim, but just not in that particular sense. I think the word would be like, you were conditioned to do what was right, and you did what was right, and you woke up but you woke up at 30 as opposed to 75 and said, holy shit, like I never had any control of this. Yeah.
If you like what you're hearing so far and you are not making at least $120,000 a year with cash flow real estate or have millions of dollars in equity, come check out our 0 to 100 elite community. The link is below. Check it out.
Well, two things. First of all, you sounded very much like a victim. That whole time was just reinforcing your victimness, which is embarrassing for you and everybody listening. You should be embarrassed of yourself and ashamed, honestly.
Is that gaslighting or is that reverse manipulation?
I think it's called gaslighting.
I think it's called
kind of both.
I think you're kind of a narcissist.
It's one of the things I'm really good at, Travis. Yes. Okay, so Welcome to the show. I think the reason I say that is I think there's this like awakening, well, first of all, let me say this. Some people don't mind giving up control to a job, to a career, to an employer, right? To Wall Street, to the 401k, I have people in my own family that love that life is what they want and they love it. Okay, there's not like a resentment. There's not like a burning desire to be free and have control. So there's certain people, and if you're listening to this, you're probably not one of those people because you're like seeking something else. You're on YouTube or you're listening to the podcast.
Are they taught?
What's that?
Are they? Are they actually taught?
I don't know. All I'm saying is that every single human has agency and they have their own ability to make decisions. So for me, I can't just say, hey, all 30, 40-year-olds hate the job and they want control and da 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 da. Okay. But if you're listening to this, you're probably one of those people who does want control of your life and you're trying to figure it out. The reason I mentioned that 30s, to 40s, that's like when we start having kiddos, we start growing our family, like the chains start to tighten, right? Because you're like, okay, in your 20s, you get a nice job, but you don't have anything. There's like maybe some student debt, but it's like you're renting a friend's apartment for $500 or $600. Like there's no, you don't. But by the time you hit 30s, you're like, I've got the house, I've got the van, I've got the truck, I've got the wife wants to take a vacation, the husband wants to do this and buy a boat or whatever it is, the kids, the sports, the whatever, the chains start to tighten. And for me, that's what I saw happening when I was in my late 20s. I realized that if I didn't make a jump at some point, I was never going to make the jump. I was going to get tied up in this corporate thing. And for me, I was miserable in the corporate world because I had no control. I always thought my boss's boss were dumb shits. Like I was just always like, they're just idiots. I was always a rebel. I'm a terrible employee, but I had to in other words, I'm a terrible employee. I didn't want to be there, but I had to play the game. And that was like against like the way so it was just always this burning thing was to control my life. Now I remember when I left, I moved into a trailer into an RV park. Think about this. I had complete control of my life at that point, but I had like no money. And I was the happiest I've ever been in my life. Within a month of leaving my job, I hit my happiest peak and I was in an RV park, okay, literally scraping. It was the startup of me, Hannah, my little girl, Evie. And I was so happy because, I sacrificed healthcare and the money and the paycheck and the consistency and the security, all the things. But I got control back. And the day I got control back, I was like, that's what I want. That's it. And of course we want it all, right? We want it all. We want control and we want wealth and we want cash flow, we want freedom, we want all the things. At that point, I didn't have wealth. I didn't have cash flow. I didn't have the assets, but I had control, and control was so important to me that I would rather live in a cardboard box and start over with control than have no control and be tied to some corporate job that I can't stand with a boss that's not as smart as I am. So, anyway, that's my rant.
Well, nobody's as smart as you, Mitch. We've all learned.
Oh no. I'm not a smart guy. My boss was a dumb shit. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I had dumb shit bosses. Well, speaking of lack of control, I have lack of control of the vacuum cleaner outside my office here, but we'll make do.
Yeah.
I think that, but I mean, cash flow.
Would you tell your house manager to tell your personal assistant to tell the cleaner to stop vacuuming?
Shut up. So, yeah, I do have control. I have agency. Shut up.
It's the Dillard economy.
Stop the vacuuming. No, I think that, so cash flow gives you income, consistent cash flow, not just like cash flow every once in a while from the sale of a flip or a commission off selling a house or whatever, or selling a mortgage. Cash flow that comes in, every single month, whatever date that is. And it's going to come in the next month and the next month and the next month. That gives you an added layer of control because then you can start making decisions. We talk about this, we work because we love the game, but at the same time, if I want to go on a guy's trip for a week, I go. Right. There's no, I don't, and we have a good partnership because you don't make me feel bad, at least not to my face. You are passive aggressive. So I do pick up on the body language and I want to take some time off. But wealth gives you control too, because if you've got equity in real estate or if you've got cash or whatever the case is, that gives you control because, people say F you money. It's because if you have enough wealth, you can say F you. I will do whatever I want in my life. But I think something that really hit me when you and I went on this journey, like we started out buying a couple, single family house rentals on our own. We did a duplex here and there. Didn't really have control. We still had our day jobs. The cash flow is nowhere near impactful to replace the income we needed from our day jobs. But I think a big aha for me, and this kind of ties into like giving your money to Wall Street and just hope it appreciates and hope these guys that are all self-serving, these executives and these boards are all self-serving, right? They need your money. They need your money in the public markets, but you have no control. I think one thing that really hit me is when we learned about larger commercial assets. You don't have control over that duplex. If it's going to appreciate or if it's going to depreciate or whatever the case is, you hope. But forced appreciation, not to get super tactical on this, very stoic conversation that we're having, Mitchell. But forced appreciation is when you buy a larger property and I know this property will be worth $1 million more in 1 to 2 years because I know I can get revenue to X, expenses to Y, net operating and income to Z, which means I'm going to have a valuation of this, and I know I can create wealth. So I think that's what I love about it. I think that's a big aha for me with larger commercial assets, and that's why we don't buy single family houses and duplexes and threeplexes anymore. I will absolutely not buy a fourplex or smaller because I have no control over the appreciation of that asset, right? So similar to the stock market. Forced appreciation is something that really allows us to take control, drive a lot of value in these assets and cash flow. But by driving value in these assets, we can then put more responsible debt on, take cash out, refinances, which is actually tax-free. People don't really sometimes understand that. And it gives us a lot more control over the wealth that we create, hence the life that we live.